morning, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Welcome back to my Hausfrau Friday series. This is a regular segment on this channel where I talk about the kinds of domestic skills and philosophy that are applicable to anybody wanting to live a more sustainable life, anybody who really wants to be more ecologically conscious in the way that they interact with their household and with any of the possessions and objects that we own and the way we live our daily life. So whether you are a homemaker like me, or whether you are somebody who has a career outside of the home, you still live in a home and all of these skills are applicable. Now, today I'm actually upstairs in our craft room. This is a really messy space because it's a really productive space. I have my loom up here. One of my spinning wheels is up here. I have my sewing machine. I have all my fabric and fiber stash up here. And both of my daughters are painters. And so they have their canvases and their paint and all kinds of stuff everywhere up here. I love that this space is never tidy because it gives us permission to be creative, to make a mess. Not only are we creating new things up here, but we are maintaining the possessions that we already own and perhaps repairing and mending them as well. So today I want to talk about, while I am mending my daughter's skirt that has a big tear in it, I want to talk about what kinds of maintenance and mending skills are really important and how those of us who are homemakers have the privilege of perpetuating a mentality and perpetuating a skill set that is more sustainable in terms of caring for our possessions and prolonging their life. So I would say that it is pretty self-evident that consumer culture is antithetical to sustainable living. It's antithetical to permaculture, where we are striving for earth care, people care, and fair share. Consumer culture would have us strive for buying things, basically prioritizing corporate profit above sustainability, prioritizing the purchase, the acquisition, the accumulation of stuff, new stuff, on a constant cyclical basis over sustainability. So those of us that are homemakers have a wonderful opportunity to speak into a consumer culture and say, actually, there's a different way of being, there's a different way of living that really pushes to reduce harm to people and the planet. And I'm going to actively engage in that process. For me as a homemaker, that's been a really pivotal part of it. Obviously, because I'm really into permaculture, for me, there is no way that I can partition my homemaking from my desire to live in a regenerative way. It doesn't mean I do it perfectly because I'm still trapped in a consumer culture and I'm still forced to operate within this paradigm. So I would encourage you to be gentle with yourself because you also can't do sustainability perfectly and function in a society that is not set up for a framework of sustainability. But that doesn't mean we can't try it, and it doesn't mean we can't be a force to shift the way that we think. Homemakers have a lot of power. We are in charge of the domestic sphere, and many of us are in charge of future generations. So we have a lot of power actually to push toward a more sustainable and a more equitable way of living. So for me, learning the skills of how do I actually properly care for the possessions that I own and how do I repair them when they're broken has been crucial. It's been a wonderful ongoing process for me to say, actually, even though I'm 43 years old now, I can continue to gain more and more and more skills, from learning how to repair my washing machine to learning how to mend clothes, to learning how to properly care for things like the antique furniture that I've inherited. Not this piece. This is not a nice piece, but I still take care of it. But learning how to properly, like wax and polish my furniture so that the wood doesn't dry out and it has a longer life. Learning how to repair a stuck drawer. Learning how to care for garments in my possession. I think when our culture is telling us that we need to work these longer and longer hours and suck up all of our energy so that we are so depleted that we cannot commit the time to properly caring for certain things in our household, that results in those things wearing out faster so that we will have to buy new. The same way it's hard to find even a cobbler to repair your shoes, and it's much cheaper to just go buy a new pair of shoes than to repair a pair of shoes unless you're looking at high-end men's shoes perhaps. Our culture really devalues the labor and skill of maintenance and repair. And it encourages us, it perhaps forces us to be so exhausted in our paycheck-driven work that we don't have the ability to invest the proper attention to caring for the things in our home. And homemakers, by our very vocation, do have the energy and the time. One thing in particular for me has been how our family is trying to, as much as we can, wear natural fiber clothing in alignment with our environmental concerns and our values in that way. For a long time, we wore almost all natural fiber clothing. And then because of like sports for several years, we ended up wearing a lot of plastic-based clothing, and we're trying to get away from that now again. And that means we have a lot of woolens in our wardrobes, right? Either things I have knitted or woven or things we have purchased that are wool. And they can't be washed in the washing machine. And they take the time and care to wash by hand. I think a lot of people don't have that luxury. And for me, I really love the process of hand washing my woolens. I think it's really rewarding. I love the way wool smells like sheep, but I also just love the fact that I'm taking a garment that might be 35 years old, it might be 45 years old, and I'm continuing to care for it in a way that increases its lifespan. You often see me wearing my favorite kind of trademark cardigan that was my mother's. It is almost 40 years old. And because it's had a lifetime of careful hand washing, careful care, and because I have cared for it in a proper way, and because my mother before me did, I don't have to go invest in new sweaters. I can wear a sweater. I don't give a crap about fashion trends, obviously. But I can maintain that sweater for decades without having to participate in consumer culture. Those small acts of saying, flipping the bird to the notion of fast fashion or the notion of throwaway culture feel really good to me. It's a little bit of a smug feeling, but it's a good feeling because it's smugness for sustainability. It's saying like, actually, I don't have to buy your line of bull crap. Actually, I can keep wearing this sweater because it's not going to wear out. I don't have to buy a new one every year. I can maintain this garment for a long time because I have bothered to acquire the skills. So I'm going to show you the process of washing my sweater, because I just did it, washing it by hand, how it's a skill. It's not a difficult skill and it takes time, but it's an important skill that homemakers have the time and ability to go through in a way that helps us disengage from the unsustainability of consumer culture. And then I'm going to come back at the end and talk a little bit more how we as homemakers have the tremendous privilege to help our culture push towards sustainability. So I'm going to show you the process of washing my sweater. It's a skill set that I think a lot of people have lost. I would say, sadly, perhaps a lot of people, considering how many ruined, shrunken sweaters I find at the thrift store, which are great for all kinds of projects, but probably a great sadness to the folks who washed and dried them in the washing machine and the dryer. It's not a difficult process to take care of your own woolens by hand, but it does take time, and it does take a fundamental knowledge of how wool fabric interacts with soap and water and how you need to care for it. So this is this kind of iconic sweater that I wear in so many of my videos because I absolutely love it. It's 100% wool. It's one that my mother bought in the late 1980s and hardly ever wore, but it just reminds me so much of my childhood. And so I wear this sweater a lot and I take very good care of it. And I'm really careful to hand wash it because it will full in the washing machine. Fulling is the felting process for knitted garments. So you can see here, I don't know if you can see like the level of dirt in the water. I wear this out gardening all the time, and this is such a dirty sweater. It's really important that I take the time if I want to preserve it and have it last for another 35 or 40 years. It's really important that I go through that process of gently massaging the dirt, particularly out of the cuffs and around the bottom here. And then I'll let all this water drain out and I will do a second round with a rinse. Now for the wash, I use Eucalan. Let me show you here, hang on. So I use Eucalan for washing all of my woolens. Obviously they don't sponsor this channel, but my kids wore cloth diapers and they used wool soakers over the top that I knitted or made out of old sweaters from the thrift store. And Eucalan is such a good laundry soap for woolens, hand wash woolens. And you don't actually need to rinse it, but I do go ahead and rinse this out just because the water is like, can you see how dingy this is? Part of that is that this is a really dark wool and the colors bleed even now after all these years. Particularly black and blue and even red tend to bleed when you wash them. So I'm going to go through this process of rinsing out this sweater and then I'm going to hang it up on the line and I'll show you how I do that. But Once this is all done and dry, I will then look it over to see if there's any holes or snags, anything that has dropped a stitch or where a piece of fiber has gotten weak, and then I will go through and mend it. I don't need to wash the sweater more than once every few months, but it is important that I undertake that process. Okay, so I have my sweater here that's all rinsed and ready to dry. Now, the last thing you want to do if you have washed a heavy woolen garment by hand is to pick it up when it is saturated with water and let it dangle at all. We love the fact that knitting provides elasticity to a garment. It's such a great way to use woolen fibers that create a finished product that is quite stretchy and elastic in a way that perhaps crochet or a woven garment is not. The problem with that is that it does stretch the fibers, and once those wool fibers are really stretched out, it's hard to get them to go back to their original shape. So you do not want to just pick this up and let the sleeves and the rest of the garment get pulled down by the weight of the water that they have absorbed. So I'm going to set my camera down here. I'm going to use both hands and gently pick this up in a ball. But first, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to gently squeeze, never wringing, never pulling, just squeezing any little bit of water out. So now I have my sweater on an old towel, and I don't want to hang it up to dry. I want to take it and lay it out into a sweater shape as best I can. I want to recreate the shape that that sweater initially had. So you can see I've returned the sweater to its original kind of boxy late 80s shape. We want to really avoid stretching out the sleeves. It's really easy during this part to have the sleeves get pulled way too long, and I don't want that to happen here. Same thing for the bottom of the garment, okay? Now, as I'm looking at it, I can see right now there is a broken piece of yarn here, and I will need to go back and mend that once this garment is all the way dry. But for now, I have it laid out on a towel. So I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna roll it up and make like a little tube, a little sausage. And then I'm gonna step on it. I just wanna step on it and get most of the water pushed into the towel, have the towel absorb as much as possible. Sorry for the view of my garden feet. And then I need to get it ready to dry. So let me go take it outside because this is a nice sunny day. And I'll show you how. I've got my good old drying rack here all opened out. Has a broken rung at the bottom. That's okay, I got it for $1, $1.50, maybe 20 years ago. So when we're laying our woolens out to dry, it's really important that we lay them as flat as possible. So I'm gonna take another rag towel. And I'm gonna take my sausage. You can see it's really wet. The towel has done a great job absorbing so much of the water. And I'm gonna lay this out as carefully as I can in the shape of the sweater. Again, making sure that the sleeves do not hang. So here out in the garden with fresh air, and hopefully the sun will come back in a moment, my sweater should dry really nicely today. It's difficult to wash wool sweaters, heavy wool sweaters, in a cool, kind of humid weather. It's best to do it on a warm, sunny day. Again, I want to make sure that there is not really a lot of gravity hanging on the cuffs of these sleeves. You can see here I have it laid so that the weight is really down this way and not on the end of the sleeve so it doesn't stretch the sleeve out. Again, I'll need to fix this, and I noticed another bit here. It's always good to take note of what will need to be mended before you wear the sweater again. And in this way, I have a sweater that hopefully will last me another 35 years. Maybe my daughters can enjoy it. Take really good care of it. You can wear it many times before hand washing, but it's really important to take care of those garments that are precious to us, but also the more we care for our garments, the longer they last and the less we put into the waste stream. So I love the ability to care for a garment and extend its life. I love the ability to care for my furniture and extend its life. I love the ability to maintain items, objects in my home. To me, that feels like a great way to thumb my nose at consumer culture. It feels like a wonderful way to say, actually, I'm not going to participate in the unsustainability of your system, and I'm going to strive to reduce harm. And it's something that means that even those small kind of domestic things in my day, which feel really inconsequential, actually are consequential. They actually do matter. And they matter not only in terms of me being able to live out my personal values better, but they also add up when all of us, our cumulative efforts are kind of we're not going to take it from the throwaway culture that we live in. We're not going to participate in that. In any small way that we can, we are going to push back. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. And for me, it means that kind of those mundane domestic tasks feel a lot more fulfilling. They feel a lot more purposeful than just, like washing my kids' wool socks in the bathtub. So thanks for watching today. Whether you are a full-time homemaker or not, I hope these videos are an encouragement to you that you can participate in developing domestic skills around the house, and that you can participate in learning how to maintain and how to mend the material objects in your home. And in that way, you can contribute toward a more just and ecological way of living for all of us, that we can all have an element of trying to live out and trying to embody and trying to preach the message of ecological living, that there is hope, and that our small actions every day, just taking care of ourselves and our household, that those actions can be really revolutionary. Those actions could be really radical, and they can be really meaningful. So know that when you are taking on those rather mundane domestic tasks, if you're doing it in a way that embraces earth care, people care, and fair share, what you're doing is really worthy work, and it's something that you should be really proud of, and it really matters. Thank you for watching Hausfrau Friday today. I'll be back from my permaculture garden tomorrow. In the meantime, please check out my Patreon down below. Many of us who are full-time homemakers have all kinds of other expertise and all kinds of other interests and passions and other work that we do. Just because we are full-time taking care of a home doesn't mean that we don't have other work we're engaged in as well. So if you are interested in supporting the work of this channel, both for me as a homemaker and for me as a permaculture designer, check out my Patreon down below, or throw a couple of bucks at my PayPal. Thanks.